Good afternoon. I'm Bill Anderson, and we are coming live from the Costa del Sol. It's a beautiful day again on the Costa del Sol. We're still waiting for the real rains to come. Everything's looking very dry at the moment, but that's life down here. I'm delighted to welcome my guest today, Paul Montague. Welcome, Paul.
Hi, good afternoon, Bill. Welcome as well. Thank you.
Paul, we're going to talk about your work, but I'm going to talk about you first. You're a partner with Blevins, which is what is it, financial wealth management company, or how do you describe yourselves?
Yeah, we're quite a unique company in terms of what UK advisors do in giving financial advice, but we're also a very tax-centric company. We've got a huge tax office in London city centre. It's been there since 1975,
Right,
with
okay,
with private trustees in Malta, which goes hand in hand with the advice we give to British expats sometimes.
right,
And we have advisors who, again, who are very tax-centric throughout Europe, in France, Spain, Portugal, Cyprus, etc.
yeah.
So we're quite a unique in that respect.
Okay, so we're going to talk very specifically about a lot of these issues, Paul. But first of all, we need to know the man. We need to know who we're listening to here. Um, you're certainly not Spanish, are you?
I'm not Spanish, no. I'm from the north of England, Lancashire.
From
Sounds like
Lancashire, yeah.
Dave, who's just been on the show, sounds like he's from pretty close to me. I think he's Manchester way, but yeah, I'm a proud Lancashire guy who's been living in Spain for over 18 years with Blevins Franks.
Right.
And my wife, Liz, who you know, and you've met
I
many
do.
times, is from good old Accrington.
Right. I have to say this because I promised I would. I saw Liz this morning walking through La Cala with a suitcase. Is there something we should know about?
I've been trying to get rid of it for 28 years. So, no, the most likely story on that respect is she's probably gone shopping for handbags, clothes, or whatever.
And she takes a
It's her favourite
suitcase with her,
pastime.
yeah, to bring it all home.
Yeah, no. She loves getting out there and getting herself known within the clothes shops.
Yeah, no, I think it was actually that she was trying on things. It's for an event you're going to, and I think they wanted her
Oh
as a
yeah,
model for
yeah.
some sort of charity fashion thing. So I think it was full of dresses that she'd been trying on. But
No, she
I
she's
did say I
spending
would
all
just
the time
drop that
doing
one
them.
into you, Paul. So I've done it.
I think Liz is trying to find people who fit them, who are either big enough or small enough to get in these. So they're
Yeah,
all
well,
different sizes and stuff. She's got
I
to.
tried a couple of them on, but they just weren't my color, you know.
Well, yeah, okay.
Paul, you're from Lancashire. You say you've been there what, 18 years in Spain,
Yeah, in 2003, August 2003, myself and Liz, the good old days before we had children,
right?
we moved from Lancashire to
To
Tenerife, and
Tenerife,
we
yeah,
spent 17 and a half years in the Canary Islands. That was my patch, if you will.
yeah,
And it still remains my patch. And in January of this year, we relocated to the Costa del Sol into me
right,
patch.
right. And so you were 17 years on Tenerife, yeah. How is island life, Paul?
There's huge differences between living in the Canaries and mainland Spain. Mainland Spain's a lot more mobile in terms of where you want to go and how you get there.
Yeah,
I know this sounds really corny, but I need to be near my mum. So getting
right,
to England's an awful lot easier, 2 hours difference in flight. And same with Liz's mum. So we need to be near a family as they get older. But when you're living here, you feel like you're part of Europe.
right.
Whereas when you're in the Canary Isles, you feel isolated to a degree, but that's sometimes a good thing.
Sure.
It feels a very, very safe, secure place to live, does the Canary Isles in Tenerife. You're not going to
Yeah.
get your car stolen because there's nowhere to take it. Um,
This is
and
very
you
true.
don't see any crime, you don't hear too much crime.
Right.
And it's the same here, to be honest, compared to other parts of Europe, but completely different things. Living on an island does get to you to a degree. I'm happy to go to my office in Tenerife every 2 weeks,
Right.
spend 5 days there, whatever, and live here. That's ideal for me. Perfect.
Right. Yeah. So I guess you've been watching very carefully what's been happening with La Palma and
Yeah,
the volcanic eruption there. It's very, very sad. I guess that's the downside of living on an island, especially when the island's a volcano.
yeah. La Palma's a very active volcanic island. It last erupted in 1971, and this
Right.
time round, so far, it's demolished 1,200 buildings. I was
Oh,
actually talking to a client of mine who's staying in Tenerife. He's been there for 5 weeks. He's got a house in La Palma, and he's not sure if it's still standing. It's a very sad occasion, actually. I see it firsthand from people in Tenerife. I was there 8 days ago, and I was talking to somebody
Right.
who lived there, and they look and feel completely lost.
Yeah.
It's very sad.
But that is it's an extreme side of living on an island. It's what you say. There's nowhere to go.
There's
Um,
good and bad. There's good and bad. I mean, I'd love to be in Tenerife over the winter time.
right.
So
Yeah.
I'm going to tell my wife I've got a very, very busy diary in the Canaries in December, and I'm going to be away for 3 weeks, and I'll come back brown as a berry. So yeah,
Right. And you come back and you say, "Oh, yeah, you've been working really hard, haven't you?"
I've been working so hard. Look, I've put weight on.
So, Paul, I have in my hands here. I don't know if you call it the Bible according to Blevins Franks, but this is a book which you gave me when we had coffee a few weeks ago, um,
Mhm.
and this one is entitled "Living in Spain," and I tell you what, it's a weighty book, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's on its 13th edition. We've got living in different countries. The living in Spain one is very, very old. It's been going for a few decades now, and there's hundreds of thousands of books being passed out over that time.
Right.
It is, I wouldn't read it back to front. It's not one of those kind of books that you should use it as a reference,
Yeah.
but it covers double tax treaties, tax angles, the actual taxes between Spain and the UK, and just how you it helps you really just it's great for helping you settle and understand what you have to do and
Yeah.
how to do it when you become a resident of Spain.
I mean, I have to say, Paul, yeah, it covers the things that you've spoken about. The only thing I can't see in here is how to do a funeral. I mean, just about every other aspect of life in Spain is covered here. It really, I mean, getting married, assets, all the taxation stuff. It's a very, as you say, it's not the sort of thing you would take as bedtime reading, but very much it's got a very good index and very much the kind of thing you would dip in and out of,
Yeah.
depending on what aspects of finance you wanted to look at and understand. So you have similar copies of this for other European or other countries,
Yeah, living in France, living in Portugal, living in Spain, living in Malta, etc.
right?
What Blevins has become is quite a huge company over the years since 1975. We've expanded, we've grown gracefully over the years, and through a natural progression, really. British people moving offshore that need advice, quality tax-centric advice, and positioning for the capital.
Right.
We've grown into the largest company of what we do in Europe.
Hmm.
So
Right.
we've got books to handle in different areas.
Right. So, Paul, when you first came to the Canary Islands, and I'm looking at your personal experience, okay? You've
Hmm.
been living in the UK, you and Liz moved to the Canary Islands. What were the kind of things, and I'm thinking in the realm of legal and taxation and everything, what were the things that kind of struck you, first of all, coming as new residents to a foreign country, to an island?
Well, I was quite lucky because naturally I had a very, very good understanding of the tax regimes in the Connect, not just in Spain, but there's different autonomous regions in Spain. I understood the autonomous region of the Canary Isles.
Right.
So I had a good understanding what I should do and how to do it. My biggest problem was trying to find the correct people in different areas in terms of fellow professionals in accountants and lawyers who actually knew what they were talking about efficiently. And
Right.
it took me a long, long time to pin down the better professionals to deal with my clients. With a deep understanding what I had to learn, obviously, because I'm giving that kind of advice, I have to put that across through to clients and potential clients through seminars, which we do hold on regular occasions,
Sure.
and also by telephone calls. I take numerous telephone calls every single day, working days that is, not at weekends, sometimes weekends, and I
Yes.
have to portray my information through to them and give lots and lots of generic advice, which usually turns into people becoming our clients.
Hmm.
So yeah, understanding, you have to have an understanding, and the reason why people have made mistakes and perhaps lived in Spain and not paid the taxes, etc., because they don't understand many times.
Yeah.
And it's up to me to put this in a nice way, is to educate these people and to hold the hand and deal with the proper work for them, the paperwork, and put them in front of these professionals I talked about earlier.
And has Brexit, we're not going to say whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but has Brexit altered in many ways the position for Brits coming over here? And I'm thinking from a taxation point of view, from a living here point of view.
Um, First things first, I was talking about this to Liz, my wife, a couple of nights ago, and out of, after 18 years, I've got over 350 clients. Not one single client has returned to the UK. So there's a lot of bad press going out there in certain newspapers saying Brits are returning.
Yeah,
That's simply not true in terms of my clients. When it comes to people relocating from the UK, I've seen record numbers since beginning of January. I'm giving an awful lot of advice on how to do this and the different visas, and I have to
mm,
talk through all these with people. And I do this mainly over the telephone or by a link such as this. So there is definitely a record number of people moving over. I think many of them might have been living here next year and Phil's got the residence permit, the TIE.
right.
So they're doing it this year, which is not the right thing to do, but it is what it is.
Hmm.
So when it comes to, how busy am I, are we as a company? We've never been busier.
Right.
And I actually thought at the beginning of the year, we're not going to have a lot of people wanting to come to live in Spain. Common sense tells you that. And it's quite the opposite.
Yeah, it's interesting you raised that, Paul, because I did an interview with a journalist for the Daily Express yesterday.
Yeah.
And this was one of the things that he was asking about, and this was about people going back to the UK. And I said, well, I've read sensationally that Brits are going back in their droves to the UK. But I have to say, I do know people who've moved back to the UK recently. Let's just say over the last 18 months, 2 years, but certainly not in their droves.
No, not at all. Not
No,
at all.
I don't know what that's about, but
I think the ones that have gone back, they're not my clients, and unfortunately, there's a lot of entertainers on the islands when we talk about the Canary Islands, and
yeah,
they obviously couldn't do what they used to do. So there's nothing we can do about that. Hopefully, they'll come back one day because they'll be needed and required again. But
yeah.
when it comes to retired persons, nah. I think the only people, my only clients who go back are the ones that may have lost a husband and they feel a bit of,
Abs-
they need a family wrap around them. But
Absolutely.
otherwise, no, they're happy to be here, mate.
Absolutely, and that was exactly what I said to the journalist yesterday. That yeah, I do know people who have moved. I know one that's moving back in a couple of weeks, but it's for that reason that her husband died, and she's over
Mm.
here on her own. Her family are in the UK, and although she's not an elderly woman by any means, she's just decided that she'd rather be closer to her family and her grandchildren, and that's the reason for it. It's actually nothing to do with Brexit.
Yeah, yeah. I've lost a couple of clients, unfortunately, the last couple of months, and I met with the ladies. I took them for lunch together. They both knew each other, and I said to them, "Are you returning to the UK?" They went, "No chance, no way."
Really.
Um, I said, "Why not?" She says, "Have you been to Grimsby?" I says, "No." I says,
Then,
"It sounds pretty much like Blackburn."
yeah, I I have to be careful in case there's anybody from Grimsby listening in today.
Lovely
But
people, by the way, lovely people.
good people.
Northerners.
Yeah, but so Brexit will have, I'm sure, generated some work for you. You mentioned entertainers, and this was something that I picked up on, I think, just this week. That for people who, and it was entertainers, big and spectacular in Benidorm, is one of these big sort of musical
Mhm.
theatres, and they're having problems because the entertainers who would normally have come over from the UK now need a work visa to do the work here, and it's timely, it's costly, and they're struggling to get people to come over. So, it has some impact in terms of people's work, I think, and obviously the UK apparently is struggling for workers and drivers and things like that.
It's crazy times, isn't it? I mean, a lot of these people who have been entertainers in various parts of Spain, they should have and could have attained a residencia earlier than this.
Yeah,
So when they want to come back to the country, or they can have temporary absence from Spain if they've got a permanent residencia. When they come back, they can't get in because they haven't got that permanent residencia.
yeah,
Um, there's an awful lot of people that's happened to, and it's very, very sad. But nobody, could see this coming. Nobody really expected it to be this bad. And what I'm finding is a lot of people I'm talking to who want to come and reside in Spain or the islands, they expected Spain to come up with a separate entity where you can say, well, British people just turn up on the door and have €2,000 in your back pocket and you can stay. It does make sense to offer some incentive, because British people, retired people, in the numbers do spend a lot of money in Spain. But the simple fact of the matter is that's not happened. So they
No.
have to go down the working visa, which is very difficult. You have to have a business plan and everything else. You've got the golden visa, which is the easiest one, but you have to spend money on quite a large property, minimum €500,000 without the taxes. That's a net cost. Or you go down the non-lucrative visa, which you have to jump through a few hoops, but it's not that bad if you've got some money behind you, certainly money and or income. So it's not ideal. It's not as easy as getting the residency last year, but it's possible, and that's where people need the advice, because when they do take out a visa, you have to look at the taxation issues. And that's
Yeah,
where we
I
come.
mean, I've heard a lot of Brits saying that it's not fair. It's not fair. And I'm thinking about the non-lucrative visa. And for a couple coming over here, they have to demonstrate something like, what is it, €32,000 a year of
For a
passive
couple,
income.
it's just under €34,000.
34, right?
Or if they've got the money in the bank to show they can sustain their working the
Their
life in
life,
Spain for the first year. So
right.
it's not just simply an income. You can access evidence if you've had 6 months statements showing that you've got a lump sum of money in a bank. It doesn't have to be in a Spanish bank. It can be in any bank anywhere. It
Right.
can be a number of banks.
Yeah. But it has become more complicated though for people. And
Definitely.
there is another visa which I think has just been announced fairly recently. I don't know if it's even been approved. They called it the digital nomad visa,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
the digital worker visa. I'm not sure what the exact title for it is, but it's people who basically could live here and work for example, a UK company, via internet, sort of teleworking. Has that actually hit the blocks yet,
No, I
Paul?
was listening to a chap called Alex Radford. Alex is well known in the industry for obtaining visas for people. He's based in Marbella and he's very, very good indeed. He's a good talker, is Alex. I was watching one of his YouTube videos and they asked him the question, I think it was 3 weeks old, talking about this actual visa. And he says, when do you think this will become available in Spain? He says, not within 12 months. So, and he pretty much knows the situation
Right,
with these. That's all he deals with. So, I wouldn't get too excited, but it is exactly what it sounds. It's for people that want to work remotely. If they're working for a UK company, whatever,
right,
yeah, and they're not in the EU, they can stay for 12 months, and they can work from the home, or they can set up an office or whatever. But it's designed for people that work for big companies that don't have to be in an office.
right. Okay, well, it's another option, isn't it? How do these things work? People actually ask me. I I'd hasten to say I never give them any advice on financial matters, because I can count to 10 and it gets stops at about that. But the complications of people who they say, oh well, I'm here and I've got residency, and my husband works for a UK company and he's tax registered in the UK, and the kind of scenario.
Yeah, certainly do.
These kind of complicated situations. It's not just about people moving here, working here, paying their taxes here. How easy or difficult is it to get all these things sorted out for people?
Everybody's different, and I'm surprised you don't know the answers to these, because everybody else does knows on Facebook and everything
Oh,
everywhere else.
that's Bob down the
And
bar. Bob down the bar
you
knows everything.
my friend told me in the bar last night that,
Yes.
and then you talk to his friend, he can't remember saying it. So yeah, there's lots of us professionals out there. We work with professionals. If I'm not sure of the answer, I will come back to the client. But I'm pretty much sorted now in terms of giving advice. Everybody's different, Bill. Everybody's got a different scenario. People think if they're living in Spain but they're paying the taxes in the UK, that's legitimate. Well, most of the time it isn't.
Yeah.
Again, I'll go back to what I'm finding is people are fearful of how to demonstrate certain things in Spain, and certainly how to make tax entries to the Spanish authorities. They shouldn't be worried about this, because there's so many different advantages of doing so. And I'll tell you one of those. And we're talking to, it's now a client, just become a client 2 months ago. And he said, Paul, I'm happy just to do what I'm doing. I've got my state pension, I've got a company pension, I've got an annuity. But the company pension was actually a civil service pension. And I said, well, okay, well, why not paying taxes? He says, it just frightens me, Paul. I can't be bothered. I said, well, I deal with this for all my clients. I said, you're going to be better off as a tax resident of Spain. He says, how do you work in that one out? I said, well, your state pension, the UK state pension is taxable here in Spain. So's your annuity, but you get special release for annuity in Spain. And your civil service pension is taxed in the UK under the double tax treaty going back to 1974.
Right.
He says, what does that mean? I said, well, you've got two lots of allowance, personal allowance, and it's spread between two countries, so you're bound to pay less tax. He went, God, that's great. I said, but the good thing about this is, you've just told me you paid, I think it was 104,000 euros many years ago for his property, and it's worth about 600,000. I said, that's your principal private residence. It is, but it's just not been recognised by the authorities. He says, what does that mean? I says, if you sell that, as it stands now, you're going to pay an awful lot of capital gains tax in Spain. If you are a tax resident, you have been for 3 years, and you're over 65, you made a tax return, you don't pay any capital gains tax.
Right.
He went, wow, wow, that's really interesting. So there are that's just one of the advantages. People have to get their head around these kind of things, and again, in the nice possible way, it's up to me to educate people and actually help them become tax residents by putting them again in front of the right people.
Yeah, but when people move to a foreign country, Paul, what do you think are the sort of major errors that they make? And I'm thinking about in the whole sort of financial and legal side, what kind of things happen
Right.
that shouldn't?
It's a good question, that, Bill. That's a really good question, because it's something I come up against every day. If you look at somebody, the average person who's retired or retiring have an ISA. They have an investment in the UK. They've got a pension fund or a couple of pension funds in the UK. And they don't work in Spain. And what I mean by that, if you've got ISAs, we've had PEPs, ISAs, TESAs, TOISAs, etc. over the years, which are tax-free investments in the UK. They're not tax-free in Spain. They're not recognised as tax-efficient structures in Spain. So it's always better if you can, most of the time, unless somebody has a real grip on these investments, they want them to remain, it's always better to sell them down whilst the UK resident, because you don't pay any tax. Because if they're sold down when they're Spanish residents, it's a tax issue. And it's taxed on the full growth. When it comes to what we call a PCLS, which is a tax-free amount of your pension in the UK, as it sounds, it's tax-free in the UK. If that pension tax-free lump sum is taken as a Spanish tax resident, it's not tax-free in Spain, it's taxable. So that's a big one, it's a big one. It's your principal private residence in the UK. Under the UK rules, if you've got a PPR, your main home, and you sell it, no matter what age you are, you do not pay capital gains tax on it.
Right.
If you sell what was your principal private residence as a Spanish tax resident, there's certain release with this and certain allowances, but generally you will pay tax in Spain on a good part of the capital gain made on that property. So there's no relief made, blanket relief in Spain on that UK property.
So some of what you're talking about here, Paul, is about it is about planning ahead before people actually make the move and change their tax resident status, for example, about thinking about these things before they do them, yeah?
Bill, this is one of the reasons why I'm so busy, because people are aiming to become tax resident from the 1st of January next year. That's when the tax year in Spain commences. You don't have a split year system in Spain. You're a tax resident from the 1st of January or not at all.
Right.
So they've got time now to deal with these matters, and that's one of the reasons why we're busy. The other reason why we're busy as a company is because if you've actually ratified yourself as a Spanish tax resident, your UK advisor, the person that looks after your money, which is extremely important for obvious reasons, cannot look after you most of the time anymore because of Brexit, basically. Right. You haven't got those freedom of services and everything else because of Brexit. So the UK advisors are actually writing to the clients saying, because you don't live in the UK, you live in another area of the world, and you're in the EU, right, financial area, then we can't look after you. Our PI insurance won't cover us.
Right.
So we're getting an awful lot of people coming to us, coming to Blevins ranks in that regard. So we're taking over the running of the capital. That's part of what we do. We look after people's money. We make sure it's in the right place.
Right. Paul, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back very shortly.
I'll make a coffee.
You're listening to Expat Radio, your worldwide friend.
Welcome back. I'm Bill Anderson. We're coming live from the Costa del Sol, and my guest today is Paul Montague, who's a partner with Blevins Franks, and we're talking about money things, and a little bit beside that. I was saying the book which Blevins Franks have produced, which is a little bit like a Bible. It's about 400 pages or something. It's an enormous piece of work. I see there's a section on fiscal nomads.
Yeah. Always interesting, this one, Bill.
What's a fiscal nomad?
Why do you have to bring this up? Because it is such a long-winded explanation. It's for people that don't actually live anywhere for tax purposes. So if you've got I've got 4 fiscal nomads, and 3 of them are very tired of being fiscal nomads because they can't settle in one area. What I mean by that is they don't stay in any one country. I've got 2 of those people that reside in Spain, UK, and France. So they don't stay long enough to meet anybody's rules to becoming a tax resident or any country's rules. But what it does do, they remain UK domicile. A domicile is a concept from the UK, and it spoils any planning for inheritance tax because whilst you haven't decided on a new domicile of origin, you remain a UK domicile, which means you can't do much about inheritance tax planning, or you can, but not to where you'd like to do. So it's people moving around. They're not paying the taxes in France, in Spain, but they have to have the tax. Any income arising in the UK has to be taxed in the UK. Mm-hmm. All right. Now, why do they do that? I don't know really. It's if they've got a huge income from overseas that is paid gross, then I can see the point of doing it. I think 2 out of the 4 I'm talking about clients do it because they didn't want to do it. It's just happened that this is where they pitted along.
Yeah. So they don't get away without paying any tax then, Paul?
No, they don't, because any UK rising income has to be taxed in the UK. The UK would only stop taking tax when another country's tax authorities tell them differently.
Right.
Once you paid your tax in Spain, for example, on your worldwide income, they issue you with a Certificado Residencia Fiscal Convenio, and you send that to the HMRC, and they stop taxing your UK income, and they pay your income gross going forward.
It's interesting, you know. I've spoken to quite a lot of people over the years here who are, I guess they shouldn't be, but they still pay their taxes in the UK. And they say it's because it's cheaper to pay my taxes in the UK. I mean, is taxation in Spain so much higher than taxation in the UK?
No, it isn't. It can be. If you've got a large company pension, you're going to pay more tax in Spain. But I always say things such as you've got your over 65 allowance, you're going to save an awful lot of tax eventually when you come to sell your main home. But also, it's cheaper to live here.
Sure.
I went back to north of England about 4 weeks ago, and I stayed in the Premier Inn of all places. And I bought a steak, and it was £18, and it was the tiniest bit of steak I've ever seen in my life. And I thought, yeah, and you're forgetting about these things when you're living over here. So it's cheaper to live here. So you haven't got a choice nowadays. You've got an automatic exchange information between many different countries, not just the UK and Spain. And people are getting caught out now. And they have to legitimise themselves. This has been happening since 2016. So every year, if you've got a Spanish address, if you've got a Spanish a telephone number on your pension, on your investments, on your bank accounts, that information is being passed to the Spanish counterparts, the Hacienda.
Right. Okay. So that's the idea of tax evasion, maybe, but there is this big difference, isn't there, between tax avoidance and tax evasion?
Yeah, of course there is. Yeah.
Do you want to talk to us about that?
If you go back to 2012-13, we had the Model 720 that came out, and it was designed to catch out the people with tax evasion. At the time, I remember, it was noted that 38%, or estimated 38% of tax evasion was in Spain. So 38% of all the income they could have collected wasn't being collected, and they were hiding places overseas. And this is a really interesting story. You got the El Corte Inglés were approached by the HMRC. By the Hacienda, and the Hacienda asked for all clients who spent over €30,000 at that time on their card.
Oh,
And they said, no, we're not going to give it you. But they had to give it. They lost a court case. And what
right.
happened then is they got all these named people spending over 30,000. They cross-referenced them, and they were many of them being fed by an outside of Spain bank account. And
Right.
that's where it all started. And suddenly they said, right, 38% of the economy is black. Let's reduce that down to as low as possible. So we're going to come out with a system where if you don't declare it, we're going to make things painful for you financially.
Right. And they've also introduced a rule now, haven't they, about how much people can pay in cash.
Yeah.
Is it 10,000? I can't remember.
You can take €10,000 overseas with you,
Right.
cash.
But
Uh,
if you were buying, I don't know, you wanted to buy a house here and you say I'll pay cash for it,
no, no.
it can't be done now. I mean, legally it can't be done now, can it?
It's always happened in Spain, Bill. It's always happened, and it's dying now because there's big fines for things that if you buy a house for 300,000 and you've paid 50,000 cash,
Mm,
so on your escritura, your deed, it's 250,000.
right.
When you come to sell it for 400,000, you've made 150,000 gain rather than 100,000 gain. So it means you pay more capital gains tax, and
Right.
people are catching on to this.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're looking at the bank accounts of the hacienda. They're being very, very fair about it. It's not frightening. What I always say is, people, do not pay any cash. Do not
Yeah.
pay cash.
Yeah. But you know, there are now legal limits on all sorts of, well, for anything, for any transactions.
2,500, I think it was last time I looked. I'm not. It's not my field, but I think
Right.
it's 2,500. If it's more than that, you have to document it a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. So it really is attempts at avoiding more black money sort of circulating in the economy, isn't it?
I'm sure it still happens, Bill. I'm sure it still happens because it's.
You're very cynical.
No, I'm a realist
No,
actually,
you're
and
not. You're a
I'm not one
realist,
of those
Paul.
people that take cash. I promise you that. But what I would say is it will happen, but I don't think it's happening as much as it used to.
Right. So, what about this notion of tax avoidance, legitimate avoidance? What kind of things would you be advising or helping people to do in terms of organising their finance?
In the UK, we mentioned earlier, you've got ISAs and various things. Now, I'm sorry, Bill. I'm getting an echo all of a sudden. Is
Are you,
that better?
it's coming clear at this end.
Right, okay. Yeah, you've got ISAs in the UK, and they're well used in the UK, and so they should be. You know, there's no corporation tax, capital gains tax. The only tax it's liable to is inheritance tax. And in Spain, if you've got one of these things, or an offshore bond or a bond in the UK, they're not tax efficient at all. And some British companies actually offer these bonds, which work in Spain very well indeed. So what's the difference? If the Spanish approved, if they've been approved in Spain, and some of these, you know, there's some good Luxembourg companies included, have come to the authorities many, many years ago and said, we realise there's a lot of expats living in Spain, British expats. So we want an investment that works well.
Mm,
And it's not going to be based in the UK because that just ruins everything. There's a corporation tax, for example, taken out at outset. So we've got this bond. It's based in Luxembourg or Ireland or whatever it may be. And we want it to work for British expats. And the authorities, the HACCP, said, yeah, okay, if you meet all these requirements.
mm,
If they if they have an investment into if you're looking at capital, if you have an investment into one of these structures, then you save an awful lot of tax, not just on the growth, which is not taxed. Any
right.
income that you take, there's a very, very small amount, a fraction of tax payable. And you can actually, many times, match your investment structure that you've got in the UK. The only difference is, at the end of the world, there's a good old world tax.
Right.
Same with pension funds, Bill. I mean, there's a new law that's come out this year where pension funds, if you've got a pension in the UK, and let's forget about the fact that the UK advisor can't look after you, as I mentioned earlier,
Mm,
pension funds are now, based in the UK, are now liable to wealth tax.
all
Wealth
right.
tax is a tax we're not used to in the UK, but it's a nasty one if you're quite wealthy. If you move them out of the UK and put them into a HMRC approved structure,
Right.
okay, which we have, then you avoid wealth tax. And
Right.
then obviously we can look after the funds on a regular basis in addition.
Right. Okay. So there are things that can be done. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Paul, this is something which actually we kind of touched on maybe a couple of times over the months, but I think it's worth repeating. And I do a weekly live stream, and one of the weeks we look at Brexity type things, and we've had a couple of lawyers on. Is wills? Um, there are some things which are specifically Spanish, sort of little vagaries with wills. Do you think this is something that people put off too long to do? Well, you can't put it off too long, can you? Catch up with us.
Do you know what? My two wealthiest clients with Blevins Tranks have not made wills. One of them said, "Paul, it's like signing your death warrants," and the other one said, "Yeah, I'll get round to it." If you die without a will in Spain, if you die intestate, it is a huge, huge headache, a lot more so than the UK.
Yeah,
To make a UK will would actually work on your worldwide assets. But we always say as a company, make a Spanish will in addition dealing with your Spanish assets only.
right,
That's not for everybody, but the main thrust of making a Spanish will is to ensure that your Spanish assets are dealt with separately than the UK will and your worldwide assets outside of Spain.
mm,
Now, there's two important things here to say in that will, and it doesn't have to mirror the UK will. First of
okay,
all, you have to look at the relationship it's been passed to, because succession tax, the death tax, the gift tax is much more different in Spain than the UK. So you have to look at the relationship. It could be expensive if you've got Spanish assets being left to what I call one or two beneficiary groups. One or two beneficiary groups are close relationships: mother, father, grandparents, spouses, children.
right,
Three and four, three and four are cousins, aunties, uncles, stepchildren.
hmm,
Four is unmarried partners. So you have to be careful because it can cost an awful lot of money otherwise. So you have to look at that, and you need experts' advice on it. And the most poignant point, as far as I'm concerned, is since 2015, you can apply the will law of your nationality. Spanish will law is very, very restricted. It has to go to certain people in certain amounts.
yeah,
If you mention in your will that, and this doesn't count for you, Bill, because you're from Scotland, and Scotland will law is quite different than England and
it
Wales.
is, yeah. Well,
It's not as good.
yeah, well, you see, Vicky, my wife who is Spanish, and myself who's Scottish, we made our wills. I don't know, last year. I can't remember. It's not long ago, and I was able to do a Scottish will. Fortunately, we have a
Yeah.
Scottish lawyer here based in La Cala, and we did
Ah,
a
really?
Scottish will. And then we had to do two Spanish wills as well, one for her and
Yeah.
one for me. So
Yeah.
yeah, I've got mine done under Scottish law, but also a Spanish one as a backup.
Well, that's great. You have to mention it in your Spanish will. You can say, "I wish to apply the will law of my country of domicile, my country of nationality, England,"
Yeah,
and that takes away any pain in terms of contestation, and obviously you're free to apply the will law, so you can leave it to whoever you want rather than certain people, certain
right.
relationship groups. That's
Yeah,
massively important.
yeah. I mean, I do wonder about the way people talk. Yeah, well, doing a will is like signing your death warrant. It's almost like saying, I don't know, buying a fire extinguisher is going to cause a fire.
I know, it's really frightening. I'm saying, what are you talking about? You think about your children. Think
Yeah,
about your children. Because if you don't make a will, it's going to be. I had a case when I first started. Actually, it wasn't a client. It was 1 year, 11 months before they got through all the probate and everything else. And they can. You have to look at your beneficiaries, your children there afterwards, and that's why we've got a trust company. Trusts aren't for everybody, and people don't understand trust. It's an Anglo-Saxon theory. Is a trust. When the knights of the English army went fighting, I don't know if I can say British. It applied to England at the time,
right,
and they went to fight in France, and they left their wife and children back on a little farm that were given by the government. If they were
right.
killed, they lost that, and they said, "No, get out of the farm. Go and get on the streets." So the knight said, "Look, listen, it's really crazy this, because there's no incentive for us to go and fight. So
Hmm,
we want our family to inherit that farm if we get killed,
right.
because we're not going to put it back into it because we might get killed." And so the government says, "Okay, we'll make a deed of trust. We'll make a trust," and that's where trust started. If you've got a situation where you've got, somebody's got 5 children, and you might have fallen out with one, or one of them might be a spendthrift, and you might say, well, I want it to be shared in equal parts, but I want life number 5 to obtain £15,000 a year rather than giving them 150,000.
Right.
You can do that with a trust. If you're trying to direct it to certain people in certain amounts, they're absolutely perfect for that. They can also help in certain situations on inheritance tax, not just in Spain, but also the UK. So trust have a good angle for these, but they can do things that wills can't do. Otherwise, wills made properly work very well in Spain.
So if people were going to set up this sort of trust, would they do it as part of their English will rather than, would this be recognized in Spain? You say it's not a Spanish concept.
No, the trust I'm talking about, Bill, is a completely separate structure than a will. It's a completely different
Right.
entity.
Okay.
As I said, they're not for everybody, but we recognised many years ago that we need trust structures. So we set up a company in Guernsey, and about 20 years ago, we relocated that to Malta.
Yeah. Well, you see, I'm planning very carefully, Paul, that the last check I write before I die is going to bounce. Can spend it
Bill,
all.
Bill, this is something that somebody said this to me at the same seminar, 2 things, and they said, I'm going to spend all my money before I die. I'm saying, oh, really? Okay. When are you going to die? And then someone said to me, Paul, I'm a non-UK domicile. Not losing your UK domicile, especially for wealthy people, is sometimes worthwhile. Most of the time, it's not. And I says, right, are you dead? He said, no. What do you mean? I says, well, you only find out where you're domiciled for sure when you die. We can give you a good recognition of this at the moment, but you only find out. And he went, oh, right, I didn't know that. So, yeah, this is where advice is required.
Yes. Yeah, I don't think
True story, by the
way. I'm going to remember that one. You only find out your domicile when
Are
you
you dead?
die.
Yeah.
You can imagine these countries fighting each other on the battlefield to see who's going to get the money.
I know, we'll get him because I fancy his wife.
But Paul, the time is really running away. I think we've covered quite a lot of the things that you had mentioned to me. Is there anything you'd like to say about wealth tax and pensions? That was another area that you kind of said is an important area.
Yeah, there's 2 issues with pensions. Number one, you need to keep it rebalanced in terms of making sure they're in the right funds. Being in an equity fund is great, but if you've got uncertainties in the market and it doesn't match your risk profile,
Right.
then it's a silly thing. So, I see this quite a lot. I talk to people and they go, Paul, we're like a low to medium risk. We're in retirement. And I look at the portfolios and they'll have 80% in stocks and shares in the portfolio. I'm saying, well, this has done really well over the last 12 months. But in times of uncertainty, this is the things that could happen. I've been doing my job 34 years, Bill. I've
Right.
been in the industry that long, and it's just like a second nature now. And I ask a lot of questions and listen to the answers. So in terms of pensions, you do need that ongoing advice. Otherwise,
Mm-hmm.
you could be in a sticky situation if the markets tumble.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to the wealth tax, a lot of people won't be liable for wealth tax because they've basically got €1 million per person, 300,000 for the main home in Spain,
Right.
and 700,000 for other assets worldwide. Now that includes investment funds, pension funds if in the UK,
Mm-hmm.
other property, etc. And people come to me after an event, after it's happened. So I had a lady a few weeks ago say, I lost my husband three weeks ago, and I don't know what to do. And
Mm-hmm.
I've got this, and this. And when she told me, I could feel my heart sinking. This was a trust case all the way through because there's a second marriage and everything else, and we
Right.
could have avoided the forthcoming taxes. So when it comes to investments and pensions, we can develop a strategy that keeps it rebalanced, keeps it to your goals, that matches your risk profile ongoing. And we're a
Mm-hmm.
large corporation who's got the systems to do this. But also, we can set it up in a tax efficient way, which can avoid taxes in Spain to a huge degree,
Right.
if listened to, if you accept our recommendations.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to throw you really as our last little topic. I'm going to throw you a wobbly here.
No, don't. It's gone well so far.
No, it's really more your view that this whole area of cryptocurrency is I don't know how much of it is hype. I don't know how much of it is real, but how does this work in terms of tax planning, financial planning, this whole area of cryptocurrency?
It's a new theme, isn't it? It's not an actual product. You're not buying a tangible asset.
Right.
And that worries me. I've met quite a lot of people in recent months. It seems to be up and coming. And I had one chap that started with nothing. It's worth about $4 million. And I said, well, what you're looking to? He said, I think it's going to go higher. Well, what happened? It went lower. I think people that invest in cryptocurrency, you have to allocate money that it doesn't concern you. When you get Bill Gates saying we're going to see the demise of cryptocurrency and other professionals, I'm not going to argue against that because it's a really very high risk strategy. However, the chap who's made lots and lots of money, and it is taxable in Spain. The growth, if you switch between funds and you take money out and you move them around, it's a taxable event in Spain. That's from this year. Then I certainly wouldn't put them in pension funds. They wobble too much.
Right. Yeah.
But we could say in 3 years' time, look what they've done. It's been a fantastic investment. But as I said, it's money that you can afford to lose completely. I just don't trust it because I understand it. I don't trust it because it's not had any history. And it's all about investor sentiments, as all investments are, but particularly so in cryptocurrency. If you get an awful lot of people wanting to get in these, then the price will go up. If you get an awful lot of people, and you see what happened with China with the cryptocurrency and the South American country, it failed basically. They tried to use it as a currency, and that knocked it down. So there's too many risks involved, Bill.
Yeah, I did. My wife and I were talking to someone probably a couple of years ago now because COVID sort of knocked 2 years out of our lives, I think. But he was chatting about this, and he said, yeah. He said, I was a millionaire overnight. Overnight. He'd gone to bed, and whatever he'd invested in cryptocurrency or Bitcoin or whatever it was, he said he went to bed, he was a millionaire, and he got up in the morning and he was broke.
Yeah, I know. This is it. This is what worries me. You need a completely diversified approach. You need to be in equities when they're a good buy. You need to be in bond funds, government bond funds, high yield bond funds, commodities, infrastructure, cash. Cash is king sometimes. And I tend to choose the companies to a large degree that do this for you.
Right.
And there's people such as BlackRock. BlackRock are the biggest investment company in the world, and they have some very, very good structures that's available for our clients, and they do what's noted on the tin, if you will. Yeah.
Paul, our time has gone. You were saying 1 hour. That sounds like a long time. It goes.
I know. I'm going to talk about for an hour, but I have to say, Bill, you're very good at doing your job.
Thank you very much, Paul. Listen,
thank you for inviting me. I found it really enjoyable, actually.
It's been a pleasure having you on, Paul. And I wish you all a very good weekend. You and your lovely family. I presume Liz was actually heading back home after. I have to say,
Liz is sat next to me.
She's sitting next to you right now. Okay, then. Yeah, she was with the suitcase, but I have to say, she left the suitcase for someone else before she left. So
I'll have to put up with you a little bit longer.
Bill, thank you again. Thank you again. And I think we're going to get it with a song from Maroon 5, and we'll dedicate this to your lovely wife.
Worse than the previous songs. Good Lord.
You take care now, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Have a wonderful weekend, and we will be back next Friday at 1 o'clock. Thank you.
Broadcasting around the world.
Expat Radio.
This is your #1 internet radio station.